I'm dying to know the average order value of these things because they got to be big if you're getting a custom built aquarium.
I mean, that's one of the reasons why small businesses in general are tougher acquisitions, because you're almost certainly buying yourself a job.
It doesn't feel like it's a real solid margin for such a small company.
Is this a good business overall? I mean, is this a sector you want to be in? Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Acquisitions Anonymous. I am Bill D'Alessandro, one of your hosts, and this is the internet's #1 podcast on buying, selling, and operating small businesses. Today, we have a small business that is a pretty cool one. They manufacture custom aquariums. So imagine you want like a sick aquarium in your restaurant or your lobby or even your house. I think about 70% of the work is commercial. So a lot of it is the restaurants and lobbies and stuff. But imagine how cool it would be to have a commercial grade aquarium in your house. This company fabricates them, but then they also maintain them. And they have really interesting relationships with their subcontractors, where there are different subcontractors in their building that they parse out different parts of the aquarium build to. It's about $500,000 in sales, but pretty substantial free cash flow. We talk in the episode a little bit about the difference between free cash flow, EBITDA, SDE, and kind of how brokers can play hide the ball on that. We also talk about kind of how you value smaller TAM businesses, like this is a local business building aquariums. How do you value it? But this is a really interesting one, a cool end market. If you enjoy this episode, please find us on Twitter or get on our newsletter on our website, Acquisitions Anonymous. We would love to stay in touch with you. I hope you enjoy this episode of Acquisitions Anonymous.
Have you thought about exiting your current online business or buying one to start a new journey as an entrepreneur, but you have no idea where to start? You can unlock business opportunities with Boopos.com. Boopos is the #1 platform for buying and selling profitable online businesses and the first with built-in acquisition and financing for qualified buyers. At Boopos.com, you can source opportunities from Boopos exclusive listings, other marketplaces, or bring your own proprietary deal flow for approval. Boopos can offer pre-approved financing for recurring revenue businesses, allowing you to access fast funding with no personal guarantees. Do note, this is their biggest differentiator. So what do you need to sign up as a seller or buyer? Sellers, your business needs to meet these thresholds: 24 months operating your business, trailing 12 months revenue of over 100K, and 18 plus months of track record. A buyer, you need to share your credit score if you're looking for financing, proof of funds, and sharing your LinkedIn profile. And that's it. Whether you're an entrepreneur looking for the right opportunity to acquire and establish profitable business, or a founder looking to exit and sell your business at the right valuation with dedicated support, Boopos' expert M&A advisory team is on hand to help you through every stage of the process. Want to find out more? Go to go.boopos.com/Michael Girdley, sign up and get qualified to sell your business or find your next deal.
All right, Mills. So I was just telling the group before we hit record, hopefully you guys cannot get COVID from me through the podcast, but I'm feeling fine, but I'm positive for COVID. So luckily we are recording remote today.
I'm glad my square is one over, though, from you, because I feel a little safer over here.
That's funny, Heather. On mine, you're in the middle and Bill's on the right and I'm on the left.
Oh.
So be warned.
So I'm really not as safe as I feel. Okay. That's good to know.
Right before we hit record, we were reminiscing about when people reach out to us and tell us what we got right and what we got wrong on their deals. So if you hear anything in this episode or other episodes where we're just totally talking out of our ass, please let us know. We would love to hear about it.
We actually do love it. It's fun to learn what we got wrong. And it's also fun to hear that our instincts are right sometimes too. So that's great.
Yeah. All right, I got a deal today.
Yeah, so if you're listening and we're talking about your industry, hit us on Twitter or via email, and then your comments will make it probably into the show the following week.
All right, Chris.
All right, Mills, you brought us a deal?
Yeah, there's not info, but this one just jumped out at me and seemed super interesting. So this is on Sunbelt business sales, mergers, and acquisitions. And it is a manufacturer of custom aquariums. I don't think we've looked at anything like this before. Description is since 2020, 3-4 years, this company has been manufacturing custom aquariums. 70% of the clients are commercial, while the remaining 30% are homeowners. The business operates from a leased 8,750 square foot facility and subleases portions of the space to subcontractors that manufacture components of the aquariums. The business also offers fish and accessories. The asking price is $475,000. Revenue is $513,000 and change. Cash flow is $174,000 a year. They say they have FF&E of $100,000 plus and inventory of $70,000. They're not willing to offer any financing. Business is located in Atlanta, Georgia. They say that a experienced team of subcontractors manufactures the different components, 70% commercial, but they see opportunities for growth in this. They think you could grow it by networking with pet stores to provide additional business and also work with high-end home builders and remodelers to drive more of the residential side. They're selling because of other business interests. They lease the space. Monthly rent is $5,350. It's not a franchise, not home-based, not distressed, not relocatable. They're willing to, train for a smooth ownership transition, and they give like their business hours and things like that.
So this is kind of cool. So they have their own building, and this is outside of Atlanta, right? So they've got their own building, and then I assume there's like a separate business that makes like fake coral or like the pumps or, other parts of the aquarium that actually subleases directly in their warehouse. So what they're doing, I assume, is the glass fabrication, like all the actual aquarium itself. And then there are other it's kind of funny, like these little barnacle businesses. It's very aquarium parallel, right? It's just like symbiote businesses that are glued onto this one, and the finished aquariums come out the back of the building. 15 independent contractors that are used in the manufacturing of the aquariums. And I got to believe, right, this is like, big hotels or cool restaurants, and 70% of their business is commercial, 30% probably really sweet homes, right? Really nice residential aquariums.
Because you got to think, you could probably buy an aquarium off the shelf. They get pretty big, I would think. It's not going to be a full wall, aquarium or anything crazy, but you're talking about that. I'm dying to know the average order value of these things because they got to be big if you're getting a custom built aquarium.
Well, yeah,
that's my first.
It's $500,000 of revenue.
Thought.
Maybe there's $10,000 aquariums. That's only 500 aquariums a year or less.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess what does a $10,000 aquarium look like? That's kind of what I'm trying to understand here is, who's getting these custom aquariums? How big are they? They're talking about a 34% margin on the revenue. And my guess is at a company of this size, that's probably more SDE, seller's discretionary, versus, after a salary, which I would say adjusted EBITDA. And that's always tough because if it's only $174,000, you come along and you need a salary of $100 even, there's only $74,000 of adjusted EBITDA at the end of the day. That I always kind of question that in these smaller businesses. What do they mean by cash flow?
That's a great point.
Yeah, that's so hard. That's one of the reasons why small businesses in general are tougher acquisitions, because you're almost certainly buying yourself a job, because it is so rare to find a business this small where the owner is truly hands off. Right.
This is somebody who's definitely working in the business, and I'm assuming the 174 includes their salary. And in general, I just have a problem with listing SDE and kind of trying to value companies off of SDE, especially when they're really small, because should you pay a multiple of your salary or the salary that's required to do whatever, the replacement role here is? Probably not. That's just an expense in the business. So that always gets kind of tough. So I'm questioning the margin. It's 34% margin if that's really adjusted EBITDA, but it's a lot less if you need to take a salary out of that figure first. So it doesn't feel like it's a real, solid margin for such a small company.
So is this a good business overall? Is this a sector you want to be in?
I kind of love the subcontractor model. That makes it really interesting to me because I'm thinking that a large portion of their COGS, are truly variable and COGS, not a ton of fixed overhead. You can't have the world's foremost or the Southeast foremost coral expert and seaweed expert, on staff if you're having to pay their salary 12 months out of the year and you may not generate sales 12 months out of the year or consistently. So I like that part of it. I think it makes it, a lot leaner. They don't say anything about maintenance too. I'm thinking that the maintenance side of this business could be substantial. And maybe there's somebody who already does it and they can't compete and they don't want to do it, but I would build these things and you know how to build the filters and the right, plants to put in it to mix with the right fish. And so that it all works out. Like, it seems like a no brainer that you would get into the maintenance.
Yeah, that's a good point, Mills. I mean, because these are all commercial, or if they're not commercial, they're probably in a big home. I wonder if there's a whole different, like the pool boy of aquariums, probably that comes and cleans your aquarium, checks the levels, makes sure your fish don't die, etc. It does seem like an easy add-on. Or maybe one of the subcontractors in your building are doing that.
Okay.
But I mean, I think that a business like this has to transfer. Like there is a buyer out there who would be like, this is perfect. I can live off of, $80,000 a year and maybe try and grow this thing and finance maybe a reasonable portion of it. But I don't think, to your point, Heather, if the actual free cash flow that's available for debt service is, let's just say it's half, then we're still talking about, a pretty high multiple at the $475,000 asking price. So I think that would have to come down. But for the right person to own and operate this under the right structure, there's something to it that I think is intriguing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a young business. That's the other side of it. It is small, but it's also young. I mean, sometimes we see something that's really small and has been around for 15 or 20 years, and you kind of question, why is it so small still? This is small because it hasn't been around very long. And it sounds like the seller is selling for some other, interests that they have or some other opportunity that they have. So for the right person, could they come in and make something better out of this? Maybe it's been a little bit neglected while the seller has come across this other opportunity. Maybe they can expand their reach a little bit. This is in Atlanta, so it's a big metro area. There's got to be other opportunities there. It is manufacturing of something that kind of lasts, I think, a long time. So that's the other kind of side of it is
you definitely hope so.
It lasts a long time.
You think about the right? product defect liability. Like if you flood the Westin lobby with 1,000 gallons of water, like they're coming straight for you.
Be careful. Yeah, you better do a good job here. So you are building, so these are, I would just say it's very project oriented because unless they were in the maintenance business, and kind of to your point, that would be great if that was a good, if that was synergistic with this, great. But if they're just manufacturing and installing these, it's one and done. You get it in to that hotel and you've got to go sell another hotel or another office building or whatever it may be. And I think that's probably a little bit of a grind here, based on the ticket size that there's got to be some kind of a sales funnel. And a buyer could really look closely at what that is and decide whether they see opportunity or too much risk. But this is the kind of thing where you don't know until you dig in deeper, to what the sales pipeline looks like.
That's a great point, because I think the TAM on this, the total addressable market, is a little bit concerning. I mean, how many buildings are there in Atlanta? How many buildings are there that could actually, sustain a large, expensive aquarium? And then how many new ones of those are occurring each year? Either buildings being retrofitted, or new buildings being built that want something like this. I think you're talking about a very, very small sample size. And maybe you're the only person in town. You're the only guy or gal in town who actually can do this work. And so your phone rings if somebody wants it. But I do think that you would have to grow geographically if you want this to expand, or you would have to entrench and start offering other services. I like that they say they offer fish and accessories, because my guess is those are, more curated items, kind of like the aquarium itself. But maybe there's some ongoing, redesign and things like that happen. But by and large, I think that this is kind of a finite pool. Pun
Right.
intended.
And I think it brings up the point too of, the facilities that they go into. The whole real estate market, as we all know, is really going through some major changes with people working from home. So we have far less, investment in high-end office space. In fact, everyone's kind of still shrinking down as the leases come up for renewal. A lot of them are getting smaller and smaller in terms of their fancy office footprint. The restaurant industry, it always goes through cycles. It's kind of going through another one right now. So I would think of this like seafood restaurants and whatnot. High-end restaurants might have these. All the types of buildings that this product would go into, it seems to me are in lower demand right now, and a little bit of uncertainty as kind of where the demand is going to shake out. Ever since this business started, which is interesting too. The business started in 2020. So that was sort of the beginning of really changing the commercial real estate market dynamics. So that's kind of curious to me too. I would love to know where they've been installing these since 2020. Who's investing in, a big aquarium in their commercial property right now?
Yeah, because you're right. Offices are cutting down on this kind of, maybe a little bit more discretionary CapEx. I don't think, maybe some hotels, but again, how many hotels have you been into, Heather, that have an aquarium? Like I can't even remember if they did have them. That's how like inconsequential it is. It's not like
I can't think of it right now and I've been to a few. I've been traveling a bit lately and I haven't seen any.
Yeah. What do you think, Heather, about this inventory number? It kind of makes me a little bit concerned that like 40% of their free cash flow on an annual basis is tied up in inventory.
Good. Yeah. I worry about inventory anytime I look at a small deal that's got really any inventory. It's kind of where my brain goes first. Is there's a lot of risk in a small business buying and carrying inventory. How much to buy? Do I need to have that much on hand? What to buy? And as a new buyer of the business, I want my buyers to go in there and figure out if any of that is obsolete, if any of that's not saleable anymore, because they bought the wrong thing, or, that's not the right, size, or whatever it may be. It's a big problem in small companies, and it's because it's so hard to manage when you don't have scale. It's a different picture when it's a much bigger business, and they can have some margin for error. When you're in a really small business, you don't have any margin for error in inventory, and it's really tough. It's a big number for this little balance sheet, I think, and I would be concerned what that is.
I think what you get to see here is them, utilizing something that's probably a little bit more just in time. I'm not sure. I'm curious about what the story would be. You talk to enough owners and you hear these things like, oh, well, we had a really great deal on, glass that we had to, ship, and the freight was really expensive. So we bought 3 years worth of anticipated glass for the aquarium or something. There's some maybe story behind it, but my guess is that when people are procuring this product as your customer, they don't expect it like right away. This isn't like hey, bring this next week. It's going to be a very, drawn out kind of procurement process. And the installation is going to take some time, because some of these are probably, depending on the size, might even be built on site. If they only have 700 square feet, I'm guessing there are probably some that they built. It's all the costs which their subcontractors are providing. But you think they probably, manage their working capital, especially around the inventory, a little bit better.
Yeah. And I mean, good point. Because I think there's a lot of businesses where knowing how much lead time they have is really important as a buyer. If you're selling something where they're going to order it and they need it just in time, you're the just in time supplier, then you've got to carry the inventory, and you've got to look at the business from that perspective. Otherwise, I agree. This one's probably got a lot of lead time, no real need to carry a bunch of inventory. They can go get their inventory after they get the order, and that's how they probably should be managing it. I looked at a business once where the whole business was based on a particular type of metal that's used for like handrails and whatnot, coming from Europe. The foundries are all in Europe. It's not something you can get easily in the US. And it was all about just in time. That business's whole benefit was carrying about $3 million of inventory here in the US in their warehouse, because it is the kind of thing that in a project they say, oh shoot, we need this right away. We're ready for this, and they don't care about price. So they'll pay up for it to come quickly. And that was the whole business. Most businesses, it's not like that. And they shouldn't be carrying a lot of inventory. They should be playing the just-in-time game with their suppliers. So I think that's a really good point, something to look for in any business like this, where it's going into buildings or construction projects.
I think you're exactly right. It makes me think of a deal that I looked at once that they kind of played the niche incredibly, focused, and they supplied only stainless steel fittings. So stainless steel fittings substantially more than like brass or copper or, galvanized, and nobody really wants to stock those like at Granger and like your local, supply house. And so they just said, hey, we're going to be the person. We're going to have like way too much inventory on a relative basis, but because it's so expensive to hold, but everybody comes to us for it because nobody else has it in stock. And so they use that, right, that kind of drag on their balance sheet, one, to command, customer acquisition, but then two, also to command a higher margin. And if you wanted one of these things and you kind of had to go to them, otherwise it was going to take weeks to get it from the original supplier or manufacturer who was probably overseas or, wouldn't deal with you unless you bought a large lot of them.
Right. Really interesting. Yeah. You see that a lot, but I think with aquariums, it's probably not that way. Like you've got to pretty much design the part of the building or the lobby or whatever it is around the aquarium. So you've got plenty of time to know, to order, the materials, and hopefully also they get a deposit up front. This is the other thing, are they having to front the money for the inventory on orders they don't have? That's really risky versus, we get orders, then we get a deposit and we use that money to go buy the materials. That's obviously what you want. So yeah, the 70,000 of inventory is it's a question, something a buyer would have to ask. The other thing about this deal is it's really small for financing. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. Below about $500,000, most banks that do SBA loans don't want to lend. It's too expensive for them. Relative to how much interest income they could ever really make on it. So if you think about it, the cost of putting one of these acquisition loans on the books for a bank is about the same, whether it's 5 million or 500,000. So there comes kind of a point where they are below their break even. And so most of them have kind of decided that's around 500,000. So your pool, there's a few lenders that would go below that, but your pool of lenders is going to be pretty limited. They're not going to be super, responsive. This is going to be a small deal for them. And most lenders that will do the really small stuff, what they'll say is, if it's really clean and easy, we'll do it. But if it gets hairy and messy and a lot of work and small, then they don't want it.
Not worth your time. Yeah. Heather, have you worked on, it kind of calls to mind like hyper seasonal businesses. Have you worked on any deals on like, I'm thinking, things like Halloween costumes or Christmas, themes, or like maybe summer related products like beach umbrellas or, just something like that, you look at those companies and their balance sheet and their sales and, they sell everything in maybe 2 to 3 months out of the year. Like I wish Michael was here because he can talk about fireworks because this is the case, but you build, you take in all this cash flow, but then it takes you, almost 2 seasons or 6 months out of the year just to build back the inventory. Have you worked on any deals like that where the working capital is like the whole deal hinges on it?
Yeah, I have, and they're really, really tough to get financed because what you got to do a few things. First, you've got to figure out when you're going to close. You've got to close before the busy season. You do not want to close after. Then that's a terrible
10
situation.
months worth of cash flow.
Right. While you've got debt, so you've got to find the deal and manage to close it right before the busy season. So that's not easy because a buyer doesn't control enough sometimes of the whole process to really, be able to hit a timeline like that. So that's the first part. The second part is even tougher. It's figuring out how they've got to manage the cash that they get. So let's say they close before the busy season and they get this influx of cash at the end of it after they collect all their receivables. And now they've got to manage that cash. Usually they've got to kind of go down to sort of a hibernation mode of staffing and whatever else they can cut during the slow season. And they've got to show a bank and convince a bank that they could manage the cash and pay the bank, because the bank still needs to get paid every month, during that slow season. It kind of boils down to, for the bank, can you trust your borrower, your buyer, to do that, to manage the cash properly? And a lot of banks kind of conclude, no, they don't want to trust somebody to do that. So it ends up being kind of tough. The ones I've seen get done are because the buyer has, a good, strong personal financial statement with other cash, and they're pledging maybe real estate. Like they have sweetened the deal with their net worth, so to speak.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it's tough to do those.
That is tricky.
Yeah.
In a former life, I was involved in some deals like this, and it's fascinating because you have to bring a lot of strength as a buyer if you're going to buy something that has those kind of quirks to it. But also you're in a limited, you're a limited pool of possible buyers, because what the seller learns pretty quickly is, hey, there's a lot of people who don't like this, and it gets put on the, too hard pile. And so if you can get good at doing, something that everybody else thinks is too hard, it can really help you. But yeah, it's not a walk in the park by any means.
Yeah. No. Yeah. You might get a great price, but you have a lot, of work you've got to do to make it work. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Heather, what do you think on this one? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Is this doable?
I'm a lender, so I feel like I'm just always going to be doing thumbs down. I don't think so. I think this is tough unless someone's a strategic buyer of some kind. They're kind of bringing this into some other product offering.
Yeah, maybe you own like a big pet store or something like that, and you go, oh, and this would be awesome because we can cross-sell them, I don't know. I mean, what are you going to cross-sell them? Like fish food can't be very expensive. It's not like dog food, it's heavy and expensive. And I think that the asking price, I'm probably thumbs down on this one too. The asking price feels like it's based on SDE, which we're making the assumption, but there's no way that there's an extra 100,000 worth of comp and their margins are even better than 34%. Really, I'm concerned about the small TAM here, because even if you could spin up maintenance, where do you grow with this? You don't go from Atlanta to Athens, right? Or Atlanta to Augusta. You probably have to go Charlotte or Nashville or Jacksonville or something. And if you do that, then all of your efficiencies and all of the things that you might achieve with scale go out the window, because you're not going to build all these in Atlanta and ship them to Miami. You need probably the close proximity just from a freight and cost standpoint. So I think that this is a very, very difficult deal to get done under the proposed, price. And I think that at this price, there would have to be a pretty easy path towards growing it out of this kind of awkward middle size.
Yeah, good points.
Well, it definitely piqued my interest, and there's something kind of creative about it. Kudos to this person for 4 years ago starting a business at a really difficult time, growing probably a great livelihood. And I don't know if the way that the business is constructed, if it takes them 40 hours a week to earn this, but it seems like with the nature of it being project based, this could be a great kind of, maybe probably more than a side hustle, but a great quality of life for the owner, making $175,000 a year.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Thanks everybody for tuning in to another episode. If you like the episode and if you're curious about what we talk about on a weekly basis, please tell a friend and subscribe. And if you know something about commercial aquariums that we got wrong, make sure to let us know.